Now, and police in southeastern Indiana say he killed his brother because of an obsession with a television show. Both sides.
The facts are these. On November 29, 2009, Andrew Conley walked into the Rising Sun Police Department and told them that he had killed his little brother, Connor Conley.
Today, we're covering a disturbing case out of Rising Sun, Indiana, involving the murder of 10-year-old Connor Conley at the hands of his older brother, Andrew Conley, who was 17 at the time. Let's get into the background. Andrew and Connor lived with their parents, Sean and Bridget Conley, in the small town of Rising Sun, population around 2,500. By all accounts, Connor was a good kid, a fifth grader, honor roll student, lots of friends. Andrew was a high school student, but the family had recently withdrawn him because he had been cutting his arms. A red flag in hindsight. Now onto the fateful night of November 28th, 2009. The boys' parents were both at work, so 17-year-old Andrew was left to watch 10-year-old Connor. What should have been an ordinary evening turned into an unspeakable tragedy. Andrew would later tell police that he and Connor were wrestling when suddenly Andrew put Connor in a chokehold from behind until the boy lost consciousness. Connor's heartbreaking last words, "Andrew, stop." But Andrew didn't stop. Instead, he dragged Connor's barely breathing body into the kitchen, put on some gloves, and continued strangling his little brother for a full 20 minutes until blood came out of Connor's mouth and nose. Andrew then retrieved a plastic bag, put it over Connor's head, and secured it with black electrical tape. But the horror wasn't over. Andrew dragged Connor's body down to the basement, then outside to the car. Before putting Connor in the trunk, Andrew slammed the poor boy's head on the ground multiple times. I know it's hard to even comprehend someone inflicting this level of violence on anyone, let alone their own little brother. Shockingly, Andrew didn't go straight to dumping the body. Still with Connor in the trunk, Andrew first went over to his girlfriend's house for a few hours, even giving her a sweetheart ring. The girlfriend would later tell police Andrew seemed happier than usual. How twisted is that? Finally, around 11 p.m., Andrew drove to a wooded area by the Rising Sun City Park, near Connor's elementary school, and left his brother's body there, partially concealed with some vegetation. He then went home and, when his parents asked about Connor's whereabouts, claimed the boy was at their grandmother's house at. The next day, November 29th, is when things really started to unravel for Andrew. He confessed to two friends that he had killed Connor. Let's pause to appreciate that his first confessions were to teenage buddies, not the police. Real smart move there, Andrew. Later that day, Andrew walked into the Rising Sun police station and confessed. He told detectives he had fantasized about killing someone since 8th grade and compared his urge to kill to a craving for a hamburger. "I'm not loving it, Andrew." He also referenced relating to the titular character from the TV show Dexter, but I think we can all agree that Andrew is no Michael C. Hall. Police would find Connor's body that night around 8:15 p.m., and Andrew was taken into custody. The town of Rising Sun was rocked by the news. With a population that small, a crime this brutal really hits hard.
Documents with the confession police say Andrew Conley made. It details how they say he murdered his little brother and why. Now, here are just a few of the details. Police say Andrew admitted to them when they questioned him. They say that Andrew placed his hands on Connor's throat and choked him. Andrew carried Connor's body to a wooded area and laid the body on the ground and covered it with vegetation. Police also say Andrew thought about doing different things to people, quote, taking a knife and cutting someone's throat or beating them to death with my hands. You know, this murder has rocked this small community of Rising Sun. This is a town where everyone knows everyone, a town that hasn't seen a murder in more than 15 years. Laura Borchers has reaction to our #1 story.
Officers say he told them killing was a hunger. Now, 17-year-old Andrew Conley is being held here at the Switzerland County Jail in a single cell.
I just live around the corner from where they found him.
Feet from where 10-year-old Connor Conley's body was discarded. Now walking through the small town streets of Rising Sun, Nancy Cohn, like many, is stunned.
Very shocked, very shocked. I mean, it's heartbreaking, you know. I mean, you can't believe it because this is such a beautiful town.
Prosecutors describe what happened last Saturday.
Andrew Conley choked his little brother until he became unconscious.
Then dragged Connor into the kitchen to strangle his little brother for 20 minutes.
He then placed a plastic bag over his head and secured it with electrical tape.
Prosecutors add Andrew stuffed his little brother in the trunk of his car and visited his girlfriend before dumping Connor's body yards from his elementary school.
We felt that this was a cold-blooded murder.
It's shocking. Like, I don't really know what to say. It's just crazy.
Kyle Munchin is just a year younger than Andrew Conley. He says he hadn't seen Andrew in school recently, and tonight he can't help but feel for the boy's parents.
My heart goes out to his family big time.
Bridget and Sean Conley had been at work and believed their youngest son was staying at his grandma's. But the next morning, detectives say Sean had awakened to Andrew standing over him with a knife.
I just hope they can get through it because it's just sad that their little boy is, there's no explanation why his brother did this.
Investigators say in Andrew's confession, he told them thoughts about killing someone began in the 8th grade. Officials today called Andrew Conley evil and are haunted by what they say were Connor's last words.
Andrew, stop.
Conley is not eligible for the death penalty because he is 17 years old. Prosecutors say they may consider asking for life without parole. In VV, Laura Borchers, News 5.
Andrew Conley also told police that he watches a show called Dexter and that he identifies with its serial killer. Dexter, as you may know, is a Showtime cable series about a covert killer who works for Miami, Florida's police department as a blood spatter analyst. But secretly, Dexter takes the lives of people who have escaped punishment for their crimes.
Okay, so here is what happens next. Andrew Conley is now at an adult jail in Switzerland County, and he will appear in adult court.
Connor's school brought in counselors and ministers to help the students and staff try to process this devastating loss. So, what was the fallout for Andrew? Well, due to his age, he wasn't eligible for the death penalty, but was charged as an adult with murder. In police interviews, he expressed no remorse, even coldly stating he felt he had to kill Connor. Prosecutor Aaron Negengard didn't mince words, calling Andrew a cold-blooded murderer. In a disturbing twist, it came out that Andrew had twice entered his father's bedroom that morning after the murder, standing over him with a knife. Luckily, Andrew ultimately didn't go through with harming his dad too. Small mercies, I guess. Fast forward to September 2010, and Andrew pleaded guilty to Connor's murder.
Plea today in the case of an Indiana boy accused of strangling his little brother.
Andrew Conley of Rising Sun changed his plea to guilty, and now he could face life in prison without the possibility of parole. Shannon Kettler explains how attorneys for both sides plan to argue sentencing.
Well, prosecutors say they, too, were surprised by the change in plea by 18-year-old Andrew Conley. Conley arrived in dress clothes for his trial this morning, but instead of jury selection, he told the judge he wanted to change his plea to guilty. Prosecutors say Conley strangled his younger brother, 10-year-old Connor, at the Rising Sun home back in November 2009. Andrew allegedly told police he watched a series called Dexter on Showtime about a serial killer and felt, quote, just like him. On Wednesday, prosecutors plan to ask a judge for Conley to serve life in prison without parole. The teen faces a minimum of 45 years in prison, but he wouldn't necessarily have to serve all of it.
One of the problems with the law in Indiana is good time credit starts at half. And then on top of that, they can get educational credits, which has been why one of the problems in this case is he's so young that almost any sentence he got, he would be out at a relatively young age.
Andrew's attorney tells us his client is remorseful and wanted to make this guilty plea from the very beginning. The judge will decide on sentencing this Wednesday. In Rising Sun, Shannon Kettler, 9 News.
At the sentencing hearing, prosecutors pushed for life in prison without parole, painting Andrew as a remorseless killer who would strike again. The defense argued for a lighter sentence of 65 years, citing mitigating factors like Andrew's age, lack of criminal history, and cooperation with police. After an emotional 5-day hearing, the judge ultimately sided with the prosecution. Citing the heinous nature of the crime and Andrew's lack of remorse, he sentenced Andrew to life without parole. A small measure of justice for Conor.
Andrew Conley is going to spend life behind bars. News 5's Brian Hamrick is live outside the courthouse with details on the sentencing. Brian?
Yeah, Jack, well, the judge here says that even though Andrew Conley is 18 years old, he should die of old age in prison before he is ever set free. And today, Conley was sentenced to the maximum. Andrew Conley is led from the courtroom after learning the length of his sentence is also the length of his life. He said nothing as he was taken back to prison, but did interact with his attorney.
He was basically just very subdued, tearful.
Cameras were not allowed in court, and only a handful of people attended the hearing. Andrew's step-grandfather was the only family member to speak.
I'm just glad everything's done and over with us, you know, that's all. It sucks, man.
I mean, it's not what you hoped for.
No, I gotta go.
The judge considered statements from Andrew's parents.
I never would have thought this.
And even his fascination with TV serial killer Dexter, heard in jailhouse conversations.
So Dexter got arrested? Dang.
The fact that the victim, Connor Conley, was under 12 years old was the aggravating factor that allowed the life sentence. Judge James Humphrey saying aggravating circumstances outweigh the mitigating circumstances beyond a reasonable doubt.
I believe if he ever got out of jail that he would kill someone else. The judge in his decision today is assured that that will not happen.
Now, defense attorneys say they do plan to appeal this, but new attorneys will be appointed for that process. Reporting live, Brian Hamrick, News 5.
As for Conor's parents, I can't even imagine the depths of their grief, losing not one but both sons in this tragedy. They've since divorced, and sadly but unsurprising outcome, my heart goes out to them. Looking back, it's hard not to wonder if there were signs, red flags, that Andrew was going down a dark path. The self-harm, the violent fantasies. In hindsight, it feels like this kid was crying out for help that never came. Not that anything excuses the choice he made to brutally murder his brother. What I struggle with is Andrew's motive or lack thereof. He never gave a real reason for killing Conor. The best he could come up with was saying he felt he had to, like a hamburger craving. I don't know about you, but I've never had a Big Mac attack so bad I wanted to strangle someone. And his efforts to emulate the Dexter character, a vigilante serial killer, make zero sense, as Conor was an innocent child, not some criminal who escaped justice. It's like Andrew latched onto this edgy anti-hero to justify his own dark urges. But Dexter is a fictional character, and Andrew's actions have real-world consequences he'll be facing for the rest of his life behind bars. Personally, I think Andrew is a deeply disturbed individual. I don't believe he killed Conor because of a TV show. I think he likely would have acted on his homicidal fantasies with or without Dexter. The show was just a convenient scapegoat. But the reality is we may never truly understand what drove Andrew to commit such an unthinkable act of violence against his own flesh and blood. What we do know is that a young boy's life was cut short in a brutal way, and the ripple effects of Andrew's actions have devastated a family and a community. So I think the takeaway here isn't to point fingers at TV shows or any other boogeymen. It's to remember Conor, an innocent 10-year-old with his whole life ahead of him. It's to have compassion for his parents who are living every parent's worst nightmare. And it's to be aware of the warning signs in the Andrews of the world, the kids who are crying out for help, and do our best to get them that help before they make choices they can't take back. This has been a tough one to talk about, but I appreciate you taking the time to hear this story with me. Give your loved ones an extra hug today, and take care of yourselves. I'll be back next week with another case. Until then, stay safe out there.